Hi, I'm Paul McLean. I'm a fine arts specialist with the Georgia Department of Education, and this is part two of strategies for teaching technical theater face to face, digitally, or anywhere. The focus of this section is scenic design. So, in the sample Godot theater resources for teachers, Unit 2 is focused on scenic design. It starts off with a unit plan, and it goes over 6 different lesson plans. The first of these lesson plans is just about what scenic design is, and it includes lecture material that might be useful for introducing the elements and principles of scenic design, and it starts off with theater spaces. The theater spaces and scenic design PowerPoint is really necessary in terms of introducing all of the areas of design, because theater spaces, where you're performing the theater or where you're engaging and interacting with an audience, is going to be critical for each of the areas of design. So that's why theater spaces is actually included in this first unit. But if you happen to not be focusing on scenic design, if you just wanted to start off with, say, lighting or some other area of design, it might be a good idea to talk about what those theater spaces are and then move into the design. So the way that the lesson plan is laid out, again, is to introduce the students to material either face-to-face in a lecture and discussion kind of situation, or if you're doing this digitally, a video presentation that they can access asynchronously before a discussion live on a synchronous platform, or you can get that information to them in terms of printed out PowerPoints and mailed in packets. What we're going to look at right now is an example of one of those videos. We're going to look at the theater spaces and then the scenic design presentation. And again, with all of these, it's important, if you're in face-to-face, to have a discussion while you're talking about these elements of design, or if you are not face-to-face, to perhaps have a discussion board where you're posting back and forth. And so there is some sort of discussion after this, so the students are engaging with the material before you turn them loose on actually using those elements of design. Theater spaces and scenic design. The 3 essential elements of theater are a performer, a live audience, and a space in which to be. The third element, space, equally has as much to do with shaping the theatrical experience as the other 2 elements. The look and use of that space is the primary concern of the scenic designer. There are many types of theater spaces. In this presentation, we will look at some of the most common. Some of the most common forms of theater spaces include the proscenium or picture frame stage, the thrust stage, the arena stage or theater in the round, and created or found spaces. The proscenium stage. The proscenium stage is often called the picture frame stage because the proscenium arch frames the action taking place on the stage in the same way a picture frame places a border around a photograph. It is also commonly referred to as a box set with the 4th wall removed. This is because there are 3 walls surrounding the back and sides of the stage. The 4th wall would be where the proscenium arch is, facing the audience. Here there is often a curtain that is open to allow the audience to look in. In a proscenium house, the audience sits directly in front of the stage. This means that there is only one perspective from which the audience can experience the action. The proscenium stage was made popular during the Italian Renaissance. Due to the limited perspective of the proscenium stage, it is ideal for lots of spectacle. It allows for a wide variety of large sets, fly systems, and wing space to hide set pieces when not in use. Perspective drawings can also be used heavily in backdrops to create new locations and the illusion of depth. Given the distance between most of the audience and the actors, the proscenium stage can often feel remote and formal. The thrust stage. The thrust stage is one of the oldest forms of theatrical staging. The thrust stage often has only one wall or scenic element at the back of the stage, while the audience sits on 3 sides of the action. For this reason, the thrust stage is often referred to as a 3/4 thrust. The 3/4 thrust stage allows for more intimacy between the audience and performers than the proscenium stage. There is more surface area of the stage available for the audience to be seated around. In the medieval and Renaissance periods, raised platform stages with backdrops were a common form of 3/4 thrust stage. The playing area. Stage directions for a proscenium and thrust stage. Locations on the stage include upstage, downstage, stage right, stage left, center stage. This allows for markings such as cross to upstage right. The terms stage right and left for these stages are from the perspective of the actor facing the audience. The upstage, downstage terms come from raked stages that initially were elevated in the back, away from the audience, for the purpose of sight lines. This allows the stage to be broken up into sections: upstage, downstage, center stage. In this grid, one can see upstage right, upstage center, upstage left, stage right, center stage, stage left, down right, down center, and down left. The arena stage. The arena stage is often called theater in the round because the audience sits on all sides. This type of stage is similar to sporting arenas. It allows for the most intimacy between actors and performers. It allows for the most intimacy between the audience and the performer and maximizes the audience's ability to sit closer to the stage. One of the major drawbacks of this stage is that set design is often limited, as large pieces can create sightline issues for some of the audience. Stage directions for an arena stage are different from those in a three-quarter thrust stage or a proscenium stage. The arena stage is often set up as a clock face. Upstage is closer to the center of the circle, downstage is closer to the audience. Stage right and stage left are replaced with the numbers in a clock in relation to a collectively established 12 o'clock point. Another way to denote the arena stage is with cardinal directions, like a compass. Created or found spaces. Created or found spaces are informal locations for performance. These can include theatrical performances set up in spaces not originally designed for performance, such as street theater, tennis courts, even parking lots. Other types of spaces. Multi-focus spaces contain multiple areas for the audience to pay attention to. These could include a three-ring circus, or a space with multiple screens or multimedia in addition to the performance on the stage. Experimental spaces often include a black box space, where the audience can be arranged in the manner of a proscenium stage, a three-quarter thrust, theater in the round, or even in the center of the action. Scene design. Now that we have looked at some of the common types of space for theatrical performance, we will identify the role and process of the scenic designer. The first rule of design. The designers do not always build the technical aspects, but they are responsible for the safety of the performers. This is true for all elements of design. Safety and practicality are the first elements of design. Artistic qualities, while the most noticed, are secondary. Objectives of scenic design. A scene design should set tone and style, establish locale and period, develop design concepts, provide a central image or metaphor, coordinate with other production elements, and solve practical problems. Establishing tone or mood. Scenic design often sets the tone of a piece by establishing the style of the play. Style is the manner in which things are done. Style can also mean a set of rules which distinguishes a distinct period or type of play. Realism versus non-realism. One of the major distinctions in style is considering realism versus non-realism in design choices. From the beginning of theater, there has always been an issue with not being able to recreate all locations referenced in the play as truthfully as one could in real life. The opening monologue to Shakespeare's Henry V addresses this fundamental problem. The chorus bemoans the fact that the audience is trapped in a theater and is not able to truly be transported to the kingdom and time where the story takes place. Real princes and monarchs are not being observed, but rather actors utilizing heavy theatrical conventions are simply indicating the events of the tale. The chorus goes on to acknowledge that the stage cannot hold all of France, and that horses can only be spoken of rather than ridden into battle. For this reason, the chorus asks that the audience fully employ their imagination prior to hearing and judging the play. It is often more effective to lean toward non-realism in design to avoid the jarring comparisons of the real world. Non-realism does not mean anti-realism. Non-realism uses symbols and conventions to get at a truth of human experience that is not necessarily captured by imitating the world we can readily observe. These sometimes include exaggerated set pieces, colors that represent the mood of the play rather than the actual environment. A design concept. Much like the directorial concept, the designer has a central idea of how to go about the scenic design. The design concept must be an amplification of the director's central concept. The design concept must be related to the central image that the director has chosen. The scenic designer, within that context, is the sole artist, of the set. All elements of the set must be done on purpose. Each element contributes to the whole image. Locale or period. The location and period must not only convey the setting and the time period and geographic location of the play, but also the relationship the characters have with that location and period. The design concept should be evident in conveying this information. Elements and principles of design. The building blocks of design. Design tools for you to use. Line, shape and form, value, color, space, and texture. Line is the simplest tool. Lines can be straight, angled, curved, freeform, broken, thin, and thick. Each line has a psychological effect on the viewer. Shape and form. Shape is a closed two-dimensional area, length and height, and can be geometric or organic. Form is a shape in 3 dimensions, adding depth. Value is the lightness moving to white to the darkness moving to black of hue. Color. The makeup of hue, name of the color, value, lightness and darkness, and intensity and brightness are all tools that can be used to have different effects on the stage. Space. This refers to both 3-dimensional depth as well as negative and positive shape, and their relationship on the piece. Texture. Texture describes the feel of a surface. This can be real or implied. Principles. How to use your tools. Pattern, rhythm, emphasis, proportion, unity, and balance. Pattern. Repetition of the elements of design. Rhythm and movement. How the eye travels through the piece. Repetition of elements to create a sense of rhythm or movement. Emphasis. The creation of a focal point. Proportion. The relationships between sizes. Unity. How the elements fit together to create a cohesive piece. Balance. How the elements are arranged to create visual equilibrium. These can be broken into symmetrical, where both sides are exactly the same, asymmetrical, balance achieved with use of elements but not even, or radial. Balance emerges from a central point. Steps in the design process. In the beginning, the set designer needs to read the play, but not just read it, but really read it, know it inside and out, almost as well as the director knows it. While reading the script, the designer needs to take notes on ideas, themes, symbols, anything that comes to mind. Next, the initial meeting with the director is incredibly important. The director needs to outline their vision for the play, any concepts or metaphors they find appropriate, any pieces of art or poems that express the mood of the play, anything that will help the designers feel the tone of the play from the director. The designers don't bring anything but ideas to this first meeting. The designers then go back and create thumbnail sketches, roughs, etc. These are just to get across the basic ideas floating around. Roughs can be done on napkins, church programs, MapQuest directions. You never know when inspiration will strike. Thumbnails are shown to the director and other designers at the first meeting. If everything looks okay, the director will want to see renderings and real sketches. Renderings. Renderings are drawings or paintings of what the finished set will look like. They are usually in color. The most important thing renderings convey is the mood or atmosphere of the set. Renderings are shown to the director, and if the design is approved, the designer heads off to create the rest of the design. If it is not approved, the designer heads back to the drawing board. Drafting with notation. While drafting can be done by hand, there are also programs that allow drafting to be done digitally. CAD drawings are very common. CAD stands for Computer-Aided Drafting. These use programs such as AutoCAD to create drafting. CAD enables a designer to work quickly and accurately, as well as share the drafting with others through email. Ground plans. A rendering and a ground plan come about the same time in the design process. The ground plan shows the director the spatial relations between the set pieces. A ground plan is an aerial scale drawing of the set. All plans and blueprints go to the technical director once the entire design concept is finished. In addition to the set plans and blueprints, a white model is often built. After the renderings and ground plans, some set designers build models. The white model is one that has no color or treatment on it. and is just the basic forms in space. Models also show spatial relationships of a set. White models can be invaluable to technical directors. A finished model is a great tool for conveying the mood of the set design. It is incredibly detailed and takes a long time to create. Finished models are often displayed in lobbies to give theatergoers a preview of the set. For Unit 2, we look at reading scripts for the scenic design process. So, in this section, there is actually a lovely little PowerPoint that is available, which has some recommendations on how you can read a script for the purpose of scenic design. So, thoughts to consider. Scenic design often sets the tone for a piece, establishing the style of the play. The style is the manner in which things are done. Style can also be a set of rules which distinguishes a distinct period or type of play. Now, all of this information, as you've just heard, is actually in the description of scenic design. This is just a little reminder for what they're looking for. So, keeping a list on the side during a second read, it's advised that you always do a read-through of any script, or really any literary piece that you're going through at all, to read through one time completely free for enjoyment and just getting to know the piece, and then the second time actually doing an annotation to the side, depending on what your end goals are with the piece. So the list that's suggested here for scenic design is setting locale, time and period, specifics of location, requirements in the script, props, furniture, buildings, and items referenced by the dialogue. Also, you might want to note scene changes, the flow of time, practicality for actor use, and you want to read the story and have several different designs in mind. You want to think visually with the elements in mind for scenic design. So you do want to keep in mind all of those elements that were discussed in the initial lecture: line, mass, composition, and color. So as you're taking notes, you might want to include thoughts that come to you with regard to line, mass, composition, and color. And then a script report outline. You want to know the story's premise. So generally, if you had to write a log line for this play, the main character from somewhere wants what, but can't because X. So like, what is the story? What's the message? You want to know the genre. You should have some information about what that genre is. How do you know it's a comedy? How do you know it's a tragedy? And then generally, what might be the theme or idea? It's a good idea to have the character breakdown, the number of characters and gender, and description of the main characters, even if you're doing scenic design, which doesn't directly interact with what the characters might be wearing, and then the plot. So basic events over time, what happens on the Freytag Pyramid is a good way to keep yourself in line. And later, when you're actually doing full scenic design, if you're not just going to design a particular scene, that helps you understand like what things need to happen in what sequence. Dialogue. Again, even though you're not necessarily doing something that has to do specifically with the words, it's going to color the world that you are building, specifically in scenic design. So structure of the dialogue throughout, word choice that's indicative of specific characters, word choice of the script as a whole, and then world of the script. And this is ultimately really what scenic design is about. I mean, obviously, this is one of the very first things that the audience engages with, so it sets the tone for what the entire play will be. So what is the location and period? How does this affect the action? For Lesson Plan 3, there is the Scenic Design Ground Plan and Research Lesson Plan. So, once the script has been read and analyzed and presented and there is an understanding, the next step is, of course, to develop a true design plan, making sure that all of those requirements of what a scenic designer needs to do are part of that concise plan. And there is a resource here to help determine whether or not your scenic design works or is functional. This could be used as a formative or summative assessment. It goes over some very basic ideas. So the next section is going to be scenic design and a ground plan, and as well as research pictures. So at this stage, students are settled on what script they're actually going to be designing for, or what portion of a script, and they engage in research and they draft an initial ground plan. Now this can start with just a general sketch of the outline ideas of where things might be located. You could even do a plan view sketch just to sort of get into the habit of starting to draw out where things might be on whatever type of theater they're going to be working in. But eventually you want to lock down a scale floor ground plan of where stuff is going to be, and this should be checked in with the teacher, obviously, and then you can move into some research pictures as well, or you can do thumbnail sketches of the types of things that you might want to include. When first starting this off, one of the ways that I like to do this project is to actually have 20 required research pictures for elements that would be on your ground plan. So this could be textures, it could be windows, it could be pieces of your walls, Where are you getting your ideas so that we get an idea of sort of what this ground plan could look like? Once the students have actually finished a ground plan and have the research pictures, it's a good idea to present those to the class, let them sort of defend why all of this fits with the design plan, and have some critique and feedback for them. I encourage you to take a look at the Critiquing with Kindness video. That works very well for both scenic design as well as acting choices or really any other work in progress. The next stage in introducing scenic design would be to build a model. Depending on the level of your class, you could either enforce that this is a scale model, or that your ground plan as well is to scale, or this could be an approximate scale model. This lesson plan could be adapted for even a fundamentals theater if you were using just shoebox. Now, it's important, though, that they understand that this is not intended to be a tableau like from a literature class. The real goal here is to create a theater in small that would represent what you would use on the large scale. What's great about this project is if they are doing it particularly to scale, they have to go through all of the thought processes that they would need necessarily when they were building a full-scale set design. I find that if they are going to be building a full-scale set design, building a scale model is an absolutely necessary step for this. Once the scale models are complete, everything is painted and ready to go. And again, this takes at least a week, even if you're doing this on the most basic level. Having time in class for students to work on this, or check-ins if you're doing this digitally, is really important. Maybe posting progress as you go so that you can document that students are working on this over an extended period of time. It's really necessary to make sure that you afford time for them to really, really work on the project. Once the designs are complete, it's important to go through the stage of analyzing these designs and critiquing them. So one of the ways to do this, if you're live, is to put all of the sets out on the stage with the design plan, or research pictures that were included, or thumbnail sketches, or drawings, or any of that stuff next to the actual model. And then to have students walk through with a peer critique analysis of their own and actually analyze each of these. So a peer critique sheet is included in the TRL. For the model, there is a summative, diagnostic, and formative scenic design rubric that is tied directly to the standards, but it's also really important to do a peer critique. But I think it's really important to have that stage where the students are assessing the designs in isolation before they actually have the designer present the designs. Because, of course, the designer can present his or her ideas because, of course, the designer can present their ideas, and that can help you understand what's going on. But really, we want to see what the design does on its own without someone coming up and defending it verbally. And then for Lesson Plan 6, this could be done in a digital setting, but it would require students to gather their own materials, which is absolutely doable. It is the platform leg challenge from the Georgia Thespians Technical Challenge Handbook. In the classroom, this is a great hands-on opportunity. If you don't actually have the opportunity to build a full-scale set, at least they're getting in there and starting to build a platform, which is, of course, the basic floor unit for any scenic design. There are other ways to engage the students if you're in that face-to-face setting by building flats and other basic skills, and that can be done depending on what your district's capabilities are. In the digital setting, it might be more difficult, but the platform leg challenge, if your students actually have access to these materials, this is one way to go about it. And that's what we have for scenic design. So in the remainder of these, we'll go through the similarities and differences between the costume design, lighting design, and sound design. If you have any questions, please send them to us by email, or join the theater communities. We have the theater communities in the Godot Communities platform, and that's a great way to start a conversation about any of these webinars. For additional questions, please contact the Fine Arts team: Jessica Booth, Paul McLean, Casey Hall.